It truly is an honor to have this sports media executive join me. It is Dave Schafer, works with MSG Networks, but he's got an incredible career. He's got a family. Those who are familiar with this podcast channel know we don't just stick to the business here. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about his journey, but there's also the personal side. This is the Honest Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. And Dave, I know that you've probably watched a few of these. You've had friends, you've had colleagues that have been on. So I am over the moon excited to have you on, and I appreciate you joining me.
No, I appreciate it. It's great to be here, and it's nice to join a lot of friends and colleagues that I've seen on this. So thank you.
I saw, was it a few months ago, you were on a panel with Sports Video Group.
Right.
What was it like being a part of a panel like that? And what were you trying to convey? Just because you've had such an immersive experience in the industry working around the globe.
Yeah, no, I think it's sometimes when I look at my journey to actually be on a panel with the colleagues that were also on that panel and other panels in the industry, it's something that I take very seriously and proud to one. Not that's not about me. It's about what we've done as a team at MSG Networks. And I think the purpose of that panel was really to talk about the state of the industry with the RSN industry, but also what we're doing to really pivot and get to the next level and what steps we're taking. And so I find that as an opportunity to shine, for the team and for the company. So I do enjoy that.
You also enjoy technology. You just said it. You enjoy innovation in general. How much of your day do you find is based upon orbits around this love of challenging yourself, pushing yourself to the limits and learning and trying to figure things out?
I mean, that's what drives me every day. Every day I wake up. And I think that's been since I started in the industry. And I've been driven by, I would say, the producing live events, but really about, I think, the people I work with, and the culture we're trying to create. And so I'm driven about kind of holding hands and figuring things out for from a technology perspective, from a culture perspective, but also pivoting businesses. And I think I've been doing that for a while to to grow businesses, but pivot through these challenging times that were, we may be going down one path in January and you're a complete 180 in September. And so, it's really preparing for those pivots. And I find that challenge to be extremely exciting and rewarding when we can actually be agile to move like that.
I've also noticed with what you just said that you would be working on a project and maybe you've moved on, but you always seem to stay in touch with everybody you've worked with. Reunions. Hey, we worked on this event. We're all getting together. It's a few years later. It has seemed to me from afar that you've created this familial atmosphere around people you work with. And even when you now take a separate project and you move on from something, you continue to keep close ties with people that you work with and you care about. Being able to show that you care about that person beyond just the employee hat that they're wearing. How does it make the environment more fun to work? And how do you see that helping create an even better product just by the respect that you garner and that you have for one another on projects?
It's an interesting perspective, and actually, that's something I'm actually very proud of. I think are the relationships I've built throughout the years, and I think a lot of people helped me get into this industry. I was back in the late '90s, and I'm always going to be grateful for what they've done for me, and to give me my show me the way through the industry, and that carried at every step of the way. Whether I was at NBC or jumping to MTV and then over to Fuse and all of those aspects, everyone's been there to kind of help guide me on how to be successful and get to the next level. And so I want to return the favor not only to, the new generation, but to all of those folks that helped me along the way. So it's very important to me. And I'm going to be honest, it was and like a lot of people in this industry, it's like family, and they've all been very important to me, and I've never really run into anyone that hasn't really tried to be there and work as a team. I've been very fortunate in that regard.
You're
So
also very fortunate in the regard of being a father and how that dynamic plays out. You obviously have talked about how there's a familial atmosphere that you fostered in the work setting. Where do you find there's some similarities between, raising, being a dad and raising
yeah,
kids and how you create this open air dialogue of compassion and respect and genuine care for her and for that family that you have personally.
it's interesting. So my daughter's 5 years old. And so I, little later in life of having a child, but I think that has been a huge benefit. Not only for her, but for me. I spent, 25 years really spending every moment of my life in this industry to be part of amazing teams, large events. And it, I really didn't, to be honest, have the right balance. It was 100% work, which inherently people become your family in that regard. And I think the fact that I went through that journey and I was able to find success and really satisfy a lot of my milestones and goals I wanted for my career and started at an early age. I was very fortunate for that. And so to have my daughter at my age now uh, has actually changed my entire perspective on work-life balance, what's important. I've achieved so much that I wanted to that I can actually be settled down and actually spend time and focus on my daughter and her life. And I feel very fortunate being here at MSG that I'm able to do that in New York. I've traveled a lot in my career, and I just can't imagine that I would have been able to do that and maybe even climb that ladder
Yeah.
if I had had a family at that time. So maybe not. We'll never know. But I going through that has really, I think, enabled me to really respect and appreciate every moment with my entire family.
You show up for your work family, you show up for your family at home. And the way in which you do that, how does it play itself out in terms of you've opened your mind to this new arena of being a father? You've talked about how you're always going to be focused on work, and that's a very important part of your life, but you have developed a balance to then focus on family. But when you show up for your daughter, what does that look like?
I'm in the moment, and I'm actually getting a little emotional about this, but the fact that I can be in the moment with her and my wife and my stepsons, and be there on the weekends, which I probably wouldn't have been able to do in my prior life, um, has is something that I will always just feel fortunate, to be honest. And I've seen a lot through, others in this industry that maybe didn't have that opportunity because they had to be on the road a lot and they missed out a lot. And I always remember that. And I think a lot of the folks that I've known since I started in this industry had helped me think about that, um, you know, as I took this next step and to really cherish the moment. And I know it's cliche, you've got to cherish every moment because it goes by so quickly, but I've really taken that to heart. And so I do everything I can to strike that balance and be in the moment with my family.
When you're in the moment with your family, sure time seems to go by so fast, but to what extent do you feel like you have the power or you feel most like time slows down when you're in the moment, in that you can feel as if being in the moment, time stands still and you can slow down this journey just a little bit. In you realizing that, how does that play out in that home setting?
a good question. I think the fact that I'm able to provide at this point in my life, and that, they don't need to worry, and they, you know, I'm going to bring it back to sport, but the fact that I can actually have them, in sports and spend the time and be there at their practices or their games. I mean, my daughter's playing futsal now on Saturdays, and I'm there every moment I can. And it makes me reflect on, I think, the big live events that I have been a part of, to the event she's in, and that's her world, and that's her big event. That's when it slows down for me a little bit. And actually, I take them to a lot of New York Knicks games and New York Rangers games, and even just watching them and being there, sitting next to them, to be immersed in that experience of something that I've helped build, is like, it's it's hard to explain with words.
How much does thinking about her bring up your own childhood?
A lot, a lot. I grew up in the Midwest, just outside of Detroit. Um, my my parents actually met in the Vietnam War. My dad was an American GI, and brought my mom back, and I think that combination of coming back during that time, being born as a half Vietnamese child, came with some challenges within the family, but also just in society. And so I think through those years, being able to be in a situation to see her not have to go through some of that is is amazing. So I do think about it a lot, I'm glad that I can provide for her and shield her from anything like that, um, in today's society.
How hard was it to have to deal with that as a kid and to figure out how best to move forward with the the injustices that you might have heard or felt and how you were impacted by that? How deep did that rattle you to where you had to almost grow up beyond your years? I would think at that stage where in some respects I would think just that you were, yeah, growing up and you were maturing in ways that were beyond your years. How did that dynamic of having to grow up beyond your years show itself in those trying moments of your childhood, and how you can use that as learning, and as you said, I love how you described it as a shield to your daughter, and what not to do and what not to say, and how you've turned that into ultimately something you can learn from.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it made me stronger. I think it depends on, I think every person's different. You can go down one path or another. My father, who has passed now, um, had a lot of, I think, issues from being in the war, that he was not able to resolve. And so obviously that came out in my childhood, with my mom and myself. And, not to get too deep there, but I think that, you can go down one path or another. And I chose the path of staying strong, supporting him, through his tough times. And you do grow up quickly. And, um, I took care of him until, the day he passed. And my mom was there right by my side, helping me, where she could. And I think that, I think that drove me, even in some of the times that were very difficult, that, can break you down, um, are part of the reasons probably what drove me to get into the industry. I was 15 years old when I actually started working in the industry. I worked, in the Palace of Auburn Hills, which is no longer there in Detroit, which shows my age. But I think I wanted to go and provide for myself. I also probably wanted to get away a little bit from the situation, right? So I would work and work and work, and at the end of the day, I worked for NBC when they would come and cover our games. I'd be able to get on the road, be able to go work a Bulls game as a runner or in Cleveland, and then made myself my way to New York. And I think to a certain extent, I probably was running from a situation, but also drove me to succeed because I think growing up in Michigan, it's a great place. And I think there's always an expectation back in that time that you work in the automotive industry when you get out of college, right? And there's a certain expectations. And so I think a lot of people didn't were shocked at the path I chose in sports and entertainment and and didn't believe that I could do it, which actually drove me to be even, I think try to be successful. And I think that's just carried me throughout my career. And to be honest with you, I've never really thought about it that deeply until this conversation, but I think that's probably driven me.
That's what I find beautiful about conversations like this, David, is we I speak for myself that we're in this industry, it's hard to take that time to look deeply philosophical into what drives us, what leads us to do what we do. And for me, like when my dad he passed when I was a teenager from cancer, and every day I think about how I can make him proud. Even to this very day, everything drives me related to the father, and everything, that father son relationship. And it sounds as if there's that for you. When you think of him the most now, where do you see that coming in your life? His memory.
I think the one thing, and there's many things that obviously I think about, and I think about the hard times he had to deal with. My life will never be what he had to go through. And maybe I've gone through some things, but it will never compare. So I always try, it grounds me to when I'm in a situation to think of what he went through. So it keeps me stable and probably, emotionally strong to move forward. Um, and I think, and with my daughter, back to my daughter, he unfortunately never knew I had a daughter. He always wanted me to have a child. So, I try to, I think a lot about him when I'm with my daughter because I just wish he knew. I wish he knew that she existed. He would have melted.
How does your daughter melt when you talk about him to her?
I think she's in the days of just realizing, that, I have a father that is not around because she sees my mom a lot. And so, and so I don't think she's starting to connect the dots that, you know, that would be her grandfather. So I don't think I've had the opportunity to really share too much. But I do think as she gets older, I think the stories are going to definitely be impactful for her at some point.
David Schafer is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. You think about the father son relationship you have, and what is it that you didn't get as a child that now you're able to bestow on your daughter? I think there has to be what your experience was and what you learned from it, and we've talked about that. But what is it that you would have loved to have gotten more that you can now give to your own child as a inner healing for you, because now you are able to show that to someone else?
Another good question.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
look, as tough as my childhood was in some regards, I was very loved by my both of my parents, and so there's nothing that I felt was missing in that regard, and my particularly my father, always said, you do what you want to do in life. You don't follow the norm. Don't follow society and what people are telling you to do. You do what you feel in your heart and be passionate about what you do. And so, I think I will always be grateful for that. and it does resonate with me every day. And I try to, that's what I want to do for my family, and my daughter, to have her have that same type of approach in life. And so I'm not so sure anything I wouldn't say was missing. I mean, it's nice to be able to give her more experience, with travel and, global experiences and event experiences, the stuff I didn't have. Um, but outside of that, I don't think I would change much in the regards of what my parents, led me and guided me to be.
They taught you that love, and
Yeah.
you're seeing how it plays out in how important it has been in establishing a genuine respect and love for your colleague. And you talked about how much pride you take into that, and then how you carry that out with your daughter and at home with your wife. And I think about those have to have been the gifts of your parents, and how that they loved you, and that showed up in how important it was for you to do that for other people. And you've everywhere that I've gotten a chance to watch or see pictures of you doing events, there's always this getting people back together after the event and celebrating or reminiscing, and that is absolutely special to have, to remember the memories of that which you experienced. I guess one question I do have for you as we sort of focus on that for a moment, how do you choose to remember something more than something else? Like a memory that you have, what does it take for that to be more easily accessible from your experiences as a father, as say working in the industry, in what you've done there?
I think with the industry, it has been about the teams. I mean, we've worked some pretty big events, done 10 Olympics, and those always resonate with me, because of the team camaraderie, in the build and the lead up of building an Olympic Games to actually working the event. And you're working with so many people from so many different cultures that have to come together, but we're all like-minded. And I think, to me, that will always resonate. Um, there are a lot of events I've worked, but the Olympics are just different in that regard because it truly is behind the scenes, the world coming together, which is what the Olympic mission is, from an athlete perspective, but it happens on so many different levels behind the scenes. And I think that will always stand out for me from a career perspective. Um, and I think as far as my family, I still relatively new. It's 5 years, uh, 5 or 6 years. But I think it's probably it's similar, right? It's us being together in those special moments, and whether that be at an event or even just at home. I mean, I love watching all the kids, hit certain milestones and face certain challenges, and watching them fumble a little bit. That's okay, right? But seeing them get back up, is those are the moments I remember.
Those are the moments you experienced as a child, and now
Yeah,
you're seeing that in your own child. And what a,
yeah.
a full circle moment for you. And all those special moments, as we sort of conclude this conversation, I consider this a special moment, and being able to share with depth your story and how your upbringing largely shaped who you are today. And while you talked about there were challenges, there are things that you learned that allowed you to have that compassion, that allowed you to have that love that you then shared with your colleagues, that drove you. And now not only you get to do it there in the work setting, but then you also get to do it at home. It's got to be a very surreal moment for you, and a very special one indeed. David Schafer, I'm Bryan Fenley. David, thank you so much for being a
Thank
part of
you.
this.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation.